you start figuring these things out for yourself, and you're like, whoa, like everything was one big lie almost, and that's, sure, it's good to be in that, but it can also destroy you as well. So it really disheartened me. It really closed me off to the world as well. And I just wasn't interested in anything or anyone anymore. Like, I was like, all of these people are sheep. They're all NPCs. They don't know anything. I was left in this like huge lone wolf state as well after, like I said, I had no interest in talking to anything or anyone or communicating with anyone. I had no interest in like hooking up with chicks anymore or like hanging out with the boys, having beers, chatting shit, because I was like, well, I now have all this newfound knowledge that everything we've ever been told is a lie.
And they're all asleep.
They're all asleep and they're all sheep and this and that. And that's like such a terrible mindset to be in, but I'll get into that in the future. So
the credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Vitruvian Podcast, a podcast about personal renaissance. I'm your host, Zach Schenken. Today, I'm joined by Bart, the founder of the Real Life Brotherhood. Bart is an ambitious young entrepreneur in the holistic health space. Bart has been traveling the world as a digital nomad for the past few years while building out a community of like-minded men who are doing the same. Today, I want to talk traveling young, building digital businesses, as well as his unique personal story. At only 23 years of age, Bart has lived many lifetimes, which I'm excited to discuss. Bart, welcome to the show, bro.
Wow, thank you so much. That was so nice of you. That, like, honestly, you went above and beyond with that. That's the last thing I was expecting. I thought we'd just like get stuck right in, but that's really nice of you. Awesome.
Of course, bro. Yeah, I always like to give everybody their shine. I've said this before on different podcasts, but I think especially men, like, just typically don't get a lot of like external praise or validation. Like,
true.
And additionally, I think in the podcast, it's always good to start somebody off smiling, like give them their little due. But yeah, I mean it. And you're doing cool stuff, which is what I want to bring to this space today. I think just hearing more individual stories about this kind of like crazy world that we find ourselves in helps other people put themselves in the story and start to see like, wow, this really is possible. It's not just like these individual niche characters, but like there's a bunch of people carving out unique life paths, and it is really possible. So that's kind of where I want to start things off. I'm going to leave you with a pretty open-ended kind of question, but you've taken a pretty non-traditional path, at least like post-university or stepping out of university, that is. So wind back the clock. You're only 23 now, but wind back the clock a few years. What do I need to know about your story to explain the man who's sitting here today?
Okay, get ready, folks. So this is going to be the meat and potatoes, something that I haven't discussed too much, like actually like, out there to the masses. I've spoken about it with, for example, the people in my community, but okay, let's reel it right back. So currently, you're sitting in my villa here in Bali, and one thing that you said there made a lot of sense to the past version of me, which was that, and we see guys like living this cool life, or they're out in Bali, or they're out in here, Dubai, doing all this, cool, fun stuff that have, time freedom, maybe location freedom, financial independence. We tend to think at the beginning of our journeys that it's so far out of reach, and that, I don't know, like I feel like a lot of people have negative connotations associated with that as well, especially like a young guy doing good for himself, and we like to label people and say, oh, well, he's got daddy's money and he comes from wealth, and well, he got lucky, or he won, the lottery or whatever, and that could never be me. I could never do this. But like that's what I sort of find myself with nowadays, and like I'm just a normal guy at the end of the day, but I feel like, well, I don't feel, but I see other people sometimes treating me that way, and I was always the guy in that mindset as well, seeing other people living sort of the life I wanted to live, and I'd be like, almost looking down on them and saying that can never be me, but that couldn't be further from the truth, So let's reel it back. Cool. So yeah, like I said, I'm out here in Bali now. I've been running, like you said, my own business for the last 4 years. I started off in men's holistic lifestyle coaching. That's pretty open-ended. Maybe I could get into that in the next while. But obviously, you said what I'm doing right now, my main thing is a network. So when I say I'm just a normal guy, believe you me, I was the most normal guy. Matter of fact, like, I'd say I was a bit of a degenerate. This is something that I spoke about a little bit, but this is going to go like deeper in on that story. So I grew up in Ireland, born in Poland, grew up in Ireland. I was in like a small town of 5,000 people. So imagine that, you grew up in a town with 5,000 people. There's nothing to do. There's no one there. Like, everything's very tightly you know, close knit, and like everyone has this like small town mentality. And then, you know, if you pop out your head just a little too much, it's like this bucket of crabs that just sucks you back in, you know? And like, I was so fully in that as well, you know, like if there was any sort of like more creative people or people into something a bit more niche, like let's say dancing or art or whatever, you know, they'd be labeled as like, you know, oh, that, you know, weirdo. Oh, James is doing his thing again, you know, like, oh, he's not, you know, playing hurling. But I don't know if you know what hurling is. It's like an Irish sport. So yeah, oh, he's not playing hurling or Gaelic football. What a weirdo. So, you know, I was sort of always in that. Like, don't get me wrong, I wasn't lonely per se, but I felt very alone throughout, you know, my childhood and my growing up, because I always felt like a bit of an outsider. Like I had different interests to the masses. Like I wasn't interested firstly in playing hurling or Gaelic football. I wanted to do taekwondo, which, you know, I was like the only one in the whole class that did taekwondo. And then it's like, oh, well, what do you want to be, like a ninja? What do you like, you know, what's wrong with you? Why don't you just, you know, do what everybody's doing? And just little things like that. So I kept going. And then obviously, you know, you get older, and like in Ireland, there's a huge, like, for instance, drinking culture. And like people start like, you know, drinking and partying and going out, especially in the countryside where there's absolutely nothing to do when they're like, you know, 14, 15, 16. So like I was in secondary school, which I guess is high school for you guys. You know, so up until 18, like I hadn't had a drink. Like there's all these people having their, you know, 16th, 17th birthday parties, 18th birthday parties. Everyone was like getting hammered drunk, and I was still sort of that outsider there. Like I wasn't interested in like going out or drinking or doing any of that. I loved, for instance, rugby, but then I broke my leg. I had to stop playing rugby. I loved like taekwondo, but then that had to stop as well. But I always felt like a little bit of an outsider. And I, like, once again, you know, I was never lonely, but I felt a little alone. So there was like, let's say, two groups in high school. There was like the more geeky, nerdy types, and then like the jocks, I guess you'd call, you know, the guys that played sport and got the girls or whatever. So like I was cool with both of them, but I felt like I didn't really fit in directly with either of them, you know what I mean? So all of that changed by my decision when I went to university, right? So like, you know, that was my feelings with regards to like secondary school. That's what we call it in Ireland. And then when I went to university, I was like, you know what? Like this is a perfect opportunity to reinvent myself. Like I was now going to be living alone, you know, in a dorm with people that didn't know me, with a bunch of strangers. I was in a town that had 10 times more people, with a university with like 20,000 students. So I was like, whoa, this is like the perfect opportunity for me to actually do something and like maybe, you know, show these people that, you know, I'm the cool guy. And like, you know, clearly at that level of consciousness back then, you know, it wasn't very, I don't really know how to put it, but it was very ego driven, and it was very like, you know, I want to be the man, you know, like I felt like I didn't have too many friends and people like, you know, completely, you know, I don't know, enchanted by me, if you will. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to become the man. I'm going to like, you know, make as many friends as possible. I'm going to try do my best to have like the most vibrant social life, get all the chicks, do all of this, do all of that. And you know what, like, I hate to say it, but it sort of worked in university. Like I came in as a very different person to who I was just a couple months prior. And I actually started DJing quite a bit. Nice. So I've like touched on this in the past, but you know, I started DJing. I always had like a passion for music, and I DJed a bit before as well. But in university, I was like, you know what, if I start DJing, like everyone parties in university. Yeah. Every chick likes the DJ. Every guy is friends with the DJ. He's the DJ. He's the curator. He's he makes the party. He's the alchemist that gets everybody's vibes flowing and this and that. And like he dictates the energy in the room. So I was like, fuck, you know, I'm going to be the DJ. And lo and behold, you know, within a few weeks, like, you know, I was, you know, playing at parties, and like through that, obviously, I imagine everyone viewing can sort of imagine what that means, you know, like when you're DJing in university at 18, 19, it's like, you know, I was partying a lot. I was drinking a lot. I was doing a couple other things I probably shouldn't have been doing. And, you know, I was obviously surrounded by people doing the same, you know, and like sort of igniting the fire in there as well. And something very interesting, you know, I'm sure we'll expand on this in the, you know, next couple of minutes, but I was in this environment where everyone was participating in that degenerative culture of just like, you know, drinking and going out and partying every night. And, you know, I was surrounded by that. Therefore, I became that. And like, yes, you know, maybe it was my own choice as well to actually pick up DJing. But like I said, you know, the people around me really fueled that as well. So, you know, doesn't matter what you're doing. I feel like if you have people around you doing the same and or worse, it's like, oh, you know, he's doing it, so I guess I can as well. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, you end up becoming who you surround yourself with. So I was surrounded by maybe people not the best, or
Party
you know,
boys,
not too ambitious. Like, don't get me wrong, I was doing good in university, and I can like prove that in a second there as well. But when you're, you know, surrounded by that, you tend to think that everything is okay, you know, and you're just like coasting by, and like, you know, oh well, you know, it's Saturday and he's hungover in bed, and so I can be hungover in bed, and like, you know, it's just this like never-ending cycle. Yeah. Just want to say quickly before I actually let you talk as well for a second. I was a degenerate in university, but you know, I always say that I got good grades as well. And like, I know that doesn't really go hand in hand either. But I feel like this is important to say. Maybe it'll make more sense in a second. But I say, you know, I was pretty good. I was like one of the top of like the class. I was doing electronic and computer engineering.
Nice.
And basically, right, so what happened, long story short, is obviously COVID and lockdown came around. So
What year would have that been for you in uni?
2020.
Well, what year for you in school?
Second, yeah.
Okay.
For maybe first year.
Yeah,
So
it would have been like first
at the
into
end
second.
of first year or at the start of second year, something like that. Maybe midway through second year, something like that. But anyhow, you know, so I was in this paradigm of like partying, you know, a lot, and you know, I've still studied hard, like, don't get me wrong, but like all of a sudden that just finished, right? Because everyone got sent home. It was lockdown. You know, you're now out of the matrix of university and you're put back into the matrix of countryside where there's literally more cows than people. So that left me with like a lot of free time to like think and contemplate on my life path, you know, and like that's when sort of everything changed, you know. That's, how do I say this? Like, I feel like lockdown saved me, and as terrible as it was and as awful as it was, like sitting bored at home with nothing to do and like all of that, like if I hadn't been sent home from university, I probably would have kept going down that path and just ended up like the masses do now. And I see the people I was with in university today, you know, it's like no hate, but they're not living a life that I would enjoy living, and I'd have to lie to myself if I had to like sit in an office and work for a boss and like, you know, just be a little computer geek, like, you know, no offense, I know people enjoy that, but not for me. So lockdown came about, you know, I got sent home from university where, like I said, I was, you know, going out, this, that, I was the man, I was the DJ, to now being stuck at home in my parents' house in the countryside. And, you know, at first it was very, very tough, but then eventually you start to like sober up, like firstly, like physically, if you know what I mean, because, you know, it was pretty hectic in university, I'm not going to lie, but then like you start to sober up mentally, and, you know, when you're left with free time and solitude and pretty much nothing to do other than like go on walks, because, you know, uni was out, nobody knew what the fuck was going on. It's like, you know, lockdown, oh, what's gonna happen?
Stuff was closed.
Everything is closed. Every shop is closed. Every restaurant's closed. People are, you know, afraid to do anything. Luckily, I lived in the countryside, so all I could do was go on walks. You know, there's a very good quote that you probably know that I'm gonna butcher, that, you know, people get their best ideas when they're outside just taking a walk. So, you know, like I said, when I started to sober up, I actually started getting decent thoughts for once, you know, and I was like, you know what, like this university version of me, is this like conducive to the life I want to live in the future? Is this like am I proud of this? Like, is this the life that I want to live, or is this living for others, living for other people? Is this coming from ego, or is it like, is this what I genuinely want? And I just started thinking back to like when I actually came into university, and I realized that all of this was almost coming from like hatred and self-hatred. It wasn't coming from like love or insecurity, you know, maybe that's a better word. But I came in with the mindset of, I want to get, you know, as many friends as possible. I want to level up my social life. I want to get chicks. I want to do this. I want to do that. I'm like, sure, cool. Yes, I did that. But is that serving me truly? You know, like laying hungover in bed, like, let's not lie to ourselves. I imagine you've been hungover as well at one point in your life. You feel terrible. You feel terrible. And you're just sitting there in bed like, you know, and like, is that really worth, you know, this? So I started getting these thoughts like, you know, what am I doing? Like I was a little bit I was actually pretty overweight, you know, because I feel like going out and partying goes hand in hand with like frozen pizzas and kebabs and all of that shit, you know, so my health wasn't where it should have been. And, you know, I started thinking like, what if I like change things around, you know, like in the least cringe way possible. Like, I was like, you know what, I'm kind of out of shape. What if I use this next couple of weeks or next couple of months to actually like maybe get in shape and like, you know, try something different for once? Because I was like a pretty fit kid growing up, and I was playing rugby, doing taekwondo, but I sort of let go of that when, you know, I started partying and DJing and like, you know, obviously studying took up a lot of my time as well. And I was working like a job as well, stacking shelves. But I was like, you know what, like, fuck this. Like, I'm going to like switch things around, you know? So like, I got pretty lucky because I had like a gym that I could use where I lived on like a guy's farm. So basically You know, first couple of months of lockdown, that's all I did was like just pretty much walk all day. And, you know, I went to the gym. And that was like the first couple of weeks. And then through that, when you start taking care of your body externally, I feel like you sort of, yeah, you end up having to work internally as well. Because like working out, yes, sure, it's important. But working in, I feel like is so much more important. So, you know, I was getting these thoughts like, you know, okay, well, I'm like, you know, living for others, not living for myself. And then, you know, I was getting these thoughts already. And then like I started working out, started feeling better, started raising my own energy, raising my frequency, vibration, whatever you want to call it. And then came sort of the rabbit holes, you know what I mean? So long story short, you know, you start going down these rabbit holes like, okay, well, you know, first it starts off with like calories in, calories out. What are the best foods to eat? Oh, maybe I should be eating spinach and watercress because they have 17 calories per 100 grams. Da, da, da. And then you figure out that, okay, maybe that's bullshit. So you go a level deeper and it's like, okay, well, maybe meat is actually good for you. Then you go a level deeper and it's like, okay, well, no, meat is actually terrible for you. And I went vegan for 2 or 3 weeks. I felt awful. Then you figure out that, okay, well, veganism is a scam. So you go a level deeper and you're like, okay, well, maybe red meat is good and maybe sardines are good and maybe calories don't even matter that much at all. But then, you know, it's like peeling back layers of an onion, trying to find your truth. And then obviously that was like the nutrition side of things, but the rabbit holes go deep, my brother. Yeah, I'm sure you know.
Of course.
So like one day you think that it's a global health pandemic and emergency, whatever, and then the next day you're like,
did we land on the moon?
This is you're like, whoa, well, is any of this even real? You know, so you start going down these rabbit holes and finding all these different websites and sources and all these like sort of mentors and teachers out there, and you end up going crazy for a bit, you know?
Yeah.
Dude, I lost my mind for a
especially
bit.
when you're alone too. Like,
Dude,
you have no one to like bounce the ideas off of.
No one.
It just gets darker and scarier.
No one. And like, honestly, I had no close friends. Like a couple friends that I could go have beers with, but I wasn't interested in that because I was now the health guy.
Right.
You know? So I was just sitting there like for hours and hours, you know, like either working out or walking or on my laptop, like figuring out, you know, the Federal Reserve and the money, and did the Titanic really, you know, sink on its own? Did it crash into the iceberg, or was it, you know, I don't know how much I can say on YouTube.
You can say whatever you want. This is up to you.
But like, you start figuring these things out for yourself, and you're like, whoa, like everything was one big lie almost, you know. And that's, sure, it's good to be in that, but it can also destroy you as well. So it really disheartened me. It really closed me off to the world as well. And I just wasn't interested in anything or anyone anymore. Like, I was like, all of these people are sheep. They're all NPCs. They don't know anything. This whole, you know, it's all a scam. They're going to bring it out and everyone's going to get it. And they're all going to die. And, you know, this and that. So I was left in this, like, huge lone wolf state as well after. You know, like I said, I had no interest in talking to anything or anyone or communicating with anyone. I had no interest in, like, hooking up with chicks anymore, or like hanging out with the boys, having beers, chatting shit, because I was like, well, I now have all this newfound knowledge that everything we've ever been told is a lie,
and they're all asleep.
They're all asleep, and they're all sheep, and this and that, and that's like such a terrible mindset to be in. But I'll get into that in the future. So a couple of minutes ago, I said that I was a good student in uni. So people don't believe me when I say that, but this is the thing I used to like back that claim up. So, you know, I was still in university. Eventually it kicked back in with like, you know, online classes, and they obviously figured out all the Zoom meetings and this and that, all that Google Meet boring stuff. And it was absolutely terrible, you know, sitting on my laptop there, breaking my back, hunched over like this, trying to do uni. It just wasn't the same, you know. So I completely lost interest in uni, for one, because of the online stuff. And then number two, you know, I was going down all these rabbit holes that sort of opened my eyes up to how the world works, or so I thought. So I was like, oh, I don't really want to be like working for a boss, because working for a boss is working for someone else's dreams, and I could be working for my own dreams, you know. So basically an opportunity came about for like an internship. So like you had to go work for a company, you know, and you got paid a bit for it. And there's one spot open out of the like whole class, which was like 42 students. There was one spot to go to the Netherlands.
Nice. And
actually do an internship for like a prestigious company, which was actually, it was complete bullshit. But out of the 42 people, you know, pretty much everyone applied because no one wanted to be stuck in Ireland. And Ireland had some of the strictest lockdown rules. Like there's police everywhere. You couldn't do anything. You could only go on like essential trips. Whereas the Netherlands, it was pretty open. You know, it was chill. Gyms were open. Restaurants were open. Like, granted, you had to like show the
card.
You know what I mean? Which I sorted out when I was there. Wink. But you know, like there was a lot more freedom in the Netherlands. So everyone tried to get there, and we had to do all these exams, interviews, all of this stuff, you know, whatever. And I'm the one that got it, you know. So I got lucky, went over to the Netherlands for an internship, and that's when I sort of started scheming about like my life. So, you know, I already knew that I didn't want to do uni. At this stage, I was about 2.5 years in, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go to the Netherlands, and I'm going to have an essential reason to leave Ireland, you know what I mean? Because you could only leave for essential travel or whatever. So I was like, okay, well, you know, this is my exit plan. So went over to the Netherlands. I gave it a shot for a bit in the office. It was working for, you know, a pretty big multinational company, like engineering company. I'm not going to name them just in case, but, you know, like it was decent, but the actual internship was absolute bullshit. Like it was just with a bunch of like old, unhealthy pricks standing around the coffee machine talking about COVID,
nothing,
because that was still going on. So I was like, whoa, this is what the office life is like? No, this is a big fat no for me. So spent like 2.5 weeks there, and then lo and behold, that is when I decided to exit.
Damn.
You know, the exit plan. I was like, okay, well, you know what? It's now or never. There's a lot of like different side stories and side quests to this whole story. Like my girlfriend came out that I met in uni before like lockdown, and she like moved over to the Netherlands and dropped everything to come visit me out there. But basically, you know, I was like 19 at the time, and I decided that I'm gonna grab life by the balls and like drop out of university and like start in the Netherlands.
Were you communicating at all with like your parents on this plan, or was this just like no?
I couldn't, bro. I couldn't, you know, because my parents, like my mom, sort of finished university, I believe, but my dad didn't go. So like, you know,
they really wanted you to finish.
Yeah, the next step up from that would be me actually finishing university and actually doing all of that. So no, they didn't know whatsoever. I imagine they must have seen me lose interest in it. But I remember, like, you know, when I broke the news, like, it was pretty rough for the first couple of weeks, you know, and they were telling me, you know, what am I going to do? I'm going to end up homeless. I'm going to end up under a bridge. How am I going to pay food? How am I going to get rent? This, that, you know. So for a good couple of weeks, it was pretty rough. But I actually started my first, like, business.
Nice.
In the Netherlands. So I'll be honest, like, it was in resale. I imagine everyone knows what
like
resale
e-com?
is. It's sort of like, you know, it was location based, so like it wasn't fully e-com, but essentially it was like sneakers.
Sure, yeah.
You know, so like that was pretty hot back in the day, you know, with like Nikes and Yeezys and Dunks and Jordans and this and that. And, you know, I was living pretty close to like Amsterdam and Rotterdam, like big, massive cities that would see like good releases for sneakers.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know, like this is pretty good money. And like, you know, it was really good money, you know, it kept me going for a long time. And you know, like as soon as I actually dropped out, I started the Coach Bart K page as well. So that's been going like ever since I dropped out of uni. And like that was at first just like an alt account, if you know what I mean, like a spam page, if you know what I mean. Like I think I deleted all the like other posts that were just like pretty much shit posts of me just posting like random stuff. But I started that firstly just to like vlog my journey through like figuring life out for myself from this angle, but it very quickly turned into like more of the health side of things, because I realized that, you know, you go to any gym or you go anywhere, it didn't matter if I was in like Ireland or in university or in the Netherlands, and like good gyms or bad gyms, whatever, people don't know anything about health. You know, like everyone's like, oh well, what flavor of protein powder should I get, and then should I eat, you know, chicken thighs with 190 grams of, you know, 190 calories per 100 grams, or chicken breast because it's leaner. Like I was like, bro, like you're all wrong, you know. So that was like the first sort of thing I actually started posting about like nutrition and my findings online through like people like Ray Pete, or maybe I loved Dr. Axe as well, or like, you know, more so the carnivore side of things. And I was like, you know what, there's like such a huge vegan agenda out there. They're trying to push everyone to be vegan, especially in the Netherlands. It was a real big thing at the time. Everything is greenwashed and vegan and go green and this and that. And I was like, no, like beef is good for you guys. Beef is good for you. So I was like trying to scream.
For the planet.
Exactly, you know, and like obviously I didn't know that as much as I do
You're
now
still
back
learning.
then. But yeah, so that kept me going for, you know, the next couple of months. I spent about, I think, 5 to 6 months in the Netherlands. I was doing resale, so making money online, and actually good money. I had like a really nice apartment, and you know, I started just like putting myself out there online as well. And it wasn't like anything major, but it's led me to where I am today, you know. So when I was like in the Netherlands still, I didn't have any good people either. Like I said, I was living with my girl at the time, and like things were obviously up and down, you know, when you're like in a young relationship,
Sure.
living together in a different country for the first time. It can be pretty hectic.
And she was from back home?
From Ireland, yeah. So things can be pretty rough, and I didn't really have like, you know, boys to hang out with. So I was still trying to do like everything myself. And that was sort of the way I did things for the next like almost year and a half. Like after the Netherlands, I went to Barcelona for a bit, had a hiccup in Barcelona. I got like robbed. So I ended up back home for a little bit. I was home in Ireland for a little bit. And then from that, I actually moved to London. So I spent like, you know, a good couple months in London, 6, 7, 8 months, something like that. And once again, I was living with the same girl. And once again, you know, I was still doing the resale side of things, and I started taking Coach Bart K a bit more seriously because I realized, like, you know, there's actual potential here, because I started actually seeing numbers and like followers and people resonating with my content. And I had like people, you know, tell me that, oh, you know, well, I cut this out from my diet, I cut seed oils out, and now I'm less inflamed and I feel better, or, you know, like all these little things. So I was like, whoa, you know, maybe this is something that I could like take more serious. But yeah, anyhow, you know, I was in London, I was having a great time, but I didn't really have, you know, those people once again. And like, you know, I was still young. I was like, you know, 20 at the time, trying to figure everything out by myself. So that's, excuse me, that's when I sort of opened my mind up to other people once again. Because like, you know, I was in London, a lot of people obviously in London. So I was like, you know what, like maybe this is where I can stop feeling like an outsider once again and actually find others that I resonate with. Because if I'm thinking this way, if I'm thinking that, you know, veganism is bullshit and that you can make money online and you can, you know, be a holistic nomad entrepreneur and you can, you know, figure things out for yourself, I'm sure I'm going to find like some other, you know, truth seekers and people that want to like design their own destiny here in London. So I really like knuckled down on that. I tried to like network and, you know, connect with people online, and lo and behold, you know, I met a couple very cool dudes that, you know, I'm still friends with to this day. And I was like, you know what, fuck, like I was never alone. I just like didn't know where to look almost, if you know what I mean. Because your average person obviously is your average person. Even, you know, like for guys like you and me, you know, like look, peace and love everyone. And I'm genuinely, I try to be the kindest human being ever that I possibly can. I live with an open heart, especially here in Bali. I smile at everyone, no matter what they think, no matter what they believe. But it can be very, very difficult to find someone that's truly like-minded that you don't have to dumb yourself down for.
And there's also like a difference too between like treating everyone as a good person, but just because someone is nice or kind or a good person doesn't mean that they're your person and deserves to be like in your energy, in your private space. So like finding those like-minded people is beyond critical. Yeah.
And that's what I realized when I actually started hanging out with people sort of on the same wavelength or on the same path, that, you know what, like, yes, you can do everything alone. And yes, like, you know, you're going to get good ideas and you can get far alone, but just from like a couple conversations with these people, the ideas that I got and like just the energy that you get and like the reassurance that you get that, like, you know, because the guys were a bit older than me as well. You know, I was 20, they were like 26, 27, 28. So, you know, learning from them and like seeing how they did it and seeing that it's possible just like completely shifted my worldview. So like, I was like, whoa, like, you know, I'm not that crazy after all. I just needed to find my tribe. I needed to find my people. So like, don't get me wrong, it was still like a very small social circle. You know, obviously everyone has their own thing to do. So they were busy. I was busy. I was living with the girl. Eventually like things started going south with the girl pretty terribly, but terrible breakup story. So I've been heartbroken as well, if anyone is curious. But eventually that led to me leaving London for a bit, went back to Ireland, and we like split up fully. And then I actually returned to London to live with some of the guys that I'd met.
Nice.
So, you know, once again, in that, like, that's when I got my first taste of like being surrounded by sort of the right crew, like people that are actually on their shit and, you know, working on online business and that want to train and that want to do, you know, BJJ and like want to be on top of their shit. Because before this, like, you know, yes, I was hanging out with the lads here and there, but I was like living with a girl and it could be so like comfortable. And I know it comes down to the man as well, but it was like my first time in like a serious long-term relationship. But, you know, I was very comfortable. But, you know, when I came back to London, it was like I brought out the dog in me, you know. So like in the like least dickheadish cringe way possible, you know, like I was living with these guys and now I had people keeping me accountable, you know, because like, let's face it, you know, in a relationship sometimes it can get very comfortable, you know. And like I was still a young guy trying to figure it out. Obviously, I had a lot of self-growth to do, but I feel like when you're constantly giving your energy to another person, it can be difficult to focus on yourself as much as you should be. So I feel like when I was living with the guys, that's when I figured out that, I've got a lot of work to do and I should probably double, triple down on what I'm doing. And so I did, if that makes any sense to you,
Definitely.
So I started going ham on the Coach Bart K page, and lo and behold, all of a sudden I got a DM from Channel 4 on Instagram. So, you're from the US, but I'm sure the UK crowd know it's like one of the biggest TV channels in the UK. And, that gave me reassurance that my content is actually being seen and heard. And I got scouted out for like a TV show in the Netherlands. So I think we've conversed about this a little bit, So basically, they found me on Instagram preaching that veganism is a scam and that, red meat is good and that you can farm regeneratively and actually take care of the environment and take care of your health. And they wanted me for like this production in the Netherlands that actually turned out to be a complete total flop. But long story short, they wanted me to like debate a vegan against veganism while on mushrooms. So not necessarily while on mushrooms, but like before and after the trip, shortly after. So yeah,
just to clarify, the mushrooms were related to like the premise of the show.
Yes. So looking back, there's no way I'd do anything like that ever again, because it was a show that was literally just used to sort of divide and conquer, because the crowd picked the most controversial topics pretty much on the planet, put two people debating from each side, and then threw in mushrooms for the Gen Z crowd to maybe get interested. So there was, obviously veganism, it was this sort of set as well, just in front of a fire. And I had to debate the guy before mushrooms and then after mushrooms. On veganism. So I was obviously against, he was for veganism. I destroyed him, by the way. It's still on YouTube. But then, there was other topics like climate change and something like feminism or toxic masculinity, and all of this. And it was just the most brain rotting show that I would never stand for nowadays. But back in the day, I was like, what, this might actually get me some followers, and maybe I'll be able to use this to my advantage. But somewhere in between me getting the offer to do the show and then actually doing the show, which was a 3-month wait, I actually started coaching as well.
Nice.
So I started men's holistic lifestyle coaching, and what I figured is that I could probably coach health and fitness, because I was also doing an online personal trainer's degree, whatever, and I'm certified, by the way, as well, for anyone that is interested. But I figured that I could coach health and fitness, but I'm also a young guy figuring out life for myself, and I feel through the last 1.5 to 2 years of that whole journey, I got so many lessons that there's so much more that I could offer than just health and fitness, than just setting up a meal plan, than just setting up a training plan, because there's so much more, there's so much more. And then on top of that, I figured that if someone's coming to someone else for health and fitness coaching, sure, for some people, it's they don't have the time to commit to figuring out the perfect diet plan or the perfect training split, and they just want to save the time, or save the energy or save whatever, and just have someone take out the guesswork. But chances are, if someone is coming to someone else for literally just training advice, essentially, there's probably something underlying there as well, which a lot of people aren't going to want to hear this, but look, I've never asked anyone for help. If I wanted to figure something out, whether it be diet or nutrition or health, I open up my laptop, I go on YouTube, I search for it, right? I search for it. It's all out there for free, whatever you want to do. Whether that's getting in shape, building a business, going vegan, going carnivore, going keto, going paleo, all the recipes are out there, all the training splits are out there. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. None of these coaches reinvent the wheel. So that was in the back of my head. And I was like, okay, well, if this guy's asking me about what to eat, chances are there's something underlying there that he also is perhaps struggling with. You know what I mean? Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think it's coaching, it speaks to kind of what coaching is beneficial for and why it's worth the investment in general, because it rarely is a knowledge issue. If knowledge truly was power, then any layman with an internet access and an iPhone should be running the world. It should be completely disproportionate how powerful and in control of people's lives are, if just simply having more information was the magic pill. But it's much more in like the curation of the correct information. But like you're saying, when you're helping someone, like a coach, especially if it's like anything related to lifestyle, you can't separate any of these verticals. The whole human has to come along with it, which means their emotional baggage, their childhood wounds, their goals and aspirations, maybe their lack of direction, their lack of fulfillment, and all of that could be bundled or packaged into a fitness offer. But like, you're working with a human being, you're not working with a body. So I think that's like kind of what you're getting at.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and it was super interesting sometimes. Like you'd get chatting to someone, you know, obviously in the DMs about, you know, health and fitness. And they're like, you know, well, I want to get in shape. Well, why do you want to get in shape? Oh, because, you know, like, and there's all these like little like layers of the onion once again. And then it turns out that, you know, it's like a whole self-confidence issue.
Yeah.
And that, you know, he can't look girls in the eyes. And then you ask why, and then you figure out that he's addicted to something he shouldn't be. And then it's like, oh, well, bro, like, you know, 15 minutes ago you wanted to just like step in the gym, and now it turns out that you've got all these different things that are like, for lack of a better word, like fucked up in your life that you should probably focus on before you focus on any of that, because it's gonna make it a million times easier. So just felt like I should explain that, because like lifestyle coaching, I feel like it gets a bad rap, but like it's so interesting.
Yeah,
it's so interesting because once again, like someone starts up here and they think that they need, you know, I don't know, confidence coaching to be able to ask a girl out on the date, but it turns out that there's all this like mad childhood trauma that they had, and that's like, it's literally like a chain on their leg keeping them stuck there and trapped there, and they're like in this terrible mindset because this happened in their past and some girl rejected them, or they got humiliated here, and then, you know, they're still holding on to that emotional baggage. So it was so interesting. So, you know, eventually I stepped away from the resale side of things. It was like 1 or 2 months into the second London trip, and I like went full in on coaching, you know, and that's what I did up until like even very recently, up until last year. But that was quite interesting. That was quite the journey, you know, and then kept doing that. I did the TV production in the Netherlands at the end of 2022, something like that, and then came back home for Christmas, spent it with my family, and from like 2023 onwards, I was like, okay, this is it, you know. So I was like, I'm gonna travel, I'm gonna work remote, I'm gonna like live the life that I've always dreamed of, you know, essentially, like, or what I thought my dream life would be, you know, what I thought I figured out over the last 2 years. So like I came home for like New Year's, and then like very early January, I like headed off to Turkey with a guy I actually met online. So once again, like the growth, when, you know, I was with like an older guy, he was like 30 almost, something like that, and, you know, I was still like 20 or 21, something like that. So, you know, he was already killing it with online business, and just seeing how he operated, how he did things, how he'd wake up and, you know, do his like thing and then like work, and then, you know, like had like all these different things that he'd do. I was just sitting there sometimes like, whoa, like he's a machine, you know. And like I thought I was doing good because I, you know, was able to get a couple clients on my own, and like I was able to, you know, figure a lot of this out myself. But I was like, whoa, like there's levels to this, you know. And like that whole, like it was like 3 months in Turkey that really opened up my mind to like what's possible and like what's achievable. Because this guy, like, I'm not going to name drop, if you're watching, you know what I'm talking about, but he was working for Google, and he dropped out of Google to like work for himself. It's like, you know, Google obviously
massive company
for like 99% of the world, that's like their dream job, you know, that you get free haircuts and free food, and you get to sit in the pods for free, and like, you know, they subsidize your accommodation. But imagine like getting that job, getting to that level, and then being like, you know what, not for me, I'm gonna do it myself, you know. So I just found that the most inspiring time ever. So yeah, once again, you know, just like being in the right place at the right time, talking to the right person. Once again, like my whole just paradigm and worldview shifted, and I was like, whoa, like this is what's possible. Like, you know, because I was making a decent bit of money, you know, like low 4 figures online, enough to like, you know, get by, you know. I wasn't struggling or anything, but then I was like, whoa, like this guy makes 10 to 15 times more than me online, Stripe, PayPal. I was like, whoa, you know, like
you see the receipts coming in, you're like, damn,
know? Like imagine getting, you know, closing a client for 10 G's. This was like, I was like, whoa,
yeah,
you know, holy moly. And then obviously once again, going back to that conversation we had at the very beginning, when you see someone doing that online, you can be like, nah, he's a scammer, or he's a fake guru, or he's peddling bullshit. But like actually seeing it in person, I was like, whoa, like, he's actually delivering a quality service. His clients are happy, and he's able to charge this much for his services. I was like, whoa, so it's crazy, man. It's crazy. There's like a lot more I could ramble on about there, but how about you jump in here?
I think that was an impressive summary, and obviously like it was a big question of the last few years, but I think it's important to kind of like tell the story, to like give context for who's sitting here and like the man that like sits before me, because it obviously like informs how you're operating today. I will say like it feels like, based on that story, and obviously like you're doing your best to summarize, but like it's been moving quickly, like even especially since like leaving university. Do you feel like you've taken time to like internalize everything? Like, have you ever taken a period to slow back down? Because like COVID was that forced pause for everyone, including yourself. And obviously, like you alluded to, like there's so much you learn about yourself when you're just still and like not doing, but you're just being. Has there been a period of reflection on like, holy shit, like this has been a crazy 3 years?
You know what? Like, this is going to sound cringe and new age and hippie or whatever, but I like to think that I'm very meditative throughout my days every day, if that makes sense. Or like I try to do my best to sort of stay very mindful of where I'm at and how I'm feeling, and not be like this drone just doing things, just because I'm doing them. Like, I genuinely try my best to like stay very present in the moment. And I feel like that sort of grounds you in reality. And then like, obviously it like, you've heard this before, but like, I try to be very, very grateful for, how far I've come. But I feel like at this point in my life, specifically, like even right now here in Bali, I don't have the time to actually like, let's say, give up like a whole 2 weeks and just do sort of nothing, if you know what I mean. Even though it would be very probably productive to actually go inward and focus on the internal for a little bit, it has to be a good time for you to be able to afford to do that. And I feel like when you're at sort of like a tipping point or breaking point with regards to something, whether that be, business, or like, let's say you're doing like a competition for bodybuilding, like you can't afford to slow down like 2 weeks out before the competition and just like, I'm going to go off track with the diet, and I'm going to stop doing cardio, and I'm going to eat whatever, just because, it will probably be good for, my mental health or whatever. Like, does that make any sense?
No, definitely. Like, I mean, I respect the like self-awareness to know like what season you're in. Like I think there's these seasons where like you're sprinting, and then there's seasons for rest. So if you're in a sprint right now, it totally makes sense. What are some of the things, like, do you have any practices that you feel like you come back to that like really nourish that day-to-day sense of presence? Because like you said, like there is just like the buzzword, like be grateful or be present, and it's all real, but it's only real insofar as it actually like meets some sort of action during your day or some sort of like period of time. Is there something that you kind of tether to like keep you grounded?
You have to keep doing what makes you you. Does that make sense?
Well, what is that for you?
So for me personally, like I'll just say it straight up, like for instance, surfing.
Yeah.
I love surfing out here in Bali. Like, this is going to be very different for everyone because, we're all unique and we're all individuals, but you can never lose, the you in you. Does that make sense? You got to keep doing what makes you you. So whatever that might be, whether that be some sort of niche hobbies or interests, whether that be reading a book, whether that be doing something like weird and quirky that you've never told anyone about, but it makes you feel good inside. So long as it's like productive and it makes you come back to center and actually stay grounded in who you are, you got to keep doing it. And, especially if you're like an entrepreneur, it's sometimes like you feel like you just have to sit at your laptop for 20 hours straight and you got to do all of this. And there's all these invoices coming in and there's all these emails you need to get back to and there's all these DMs and like, I still have like a million different things to do. Like I'm running so many different things and I've planted so many seeds here that I got to act on, because if I don't put in the work, I don't water the seeds, nothing's going to end up happening, like throughout that, you can't lose the things that actually keep you sane, if you know what I mean. Because you can like just absolutely fry your brain and burn out as well if all you ever do is work all the time. Which is why like I hate this grind culture as well, because I was stuck in that like when I was starting to build my business. But like, you know, through that I learned that, you know, what you said, like you need to take it seasonally almost in a way. So let me give you an example. Like just before Bali, so like let's say like 3 months back now, I was actually in Turkey with some of the guys from Real Life Brotherhood, which is my community, my network. And what we did is a 2 month long event that was called Monk Mode Turkey. So just like you said, it was very seasonal, and it was like a dedicated block of time, you know, 2 months that, you know, we used to like lock ourselves in a beautiful villa in Turkey and actually just work. It's like we had guys come from all over the world. There was me, there was 2 guys from New Zealand, Australia, there's a guy from Ireland, and there was a guy from Germany as well. And like the sole purpose of that 2 months was just to like knuckle down, no distractions, no social life, no going out partying, drinking, no this, no that, like literally just sit and work and keep each other accountable, you know? And that was just insane. You know, imagine like doing it yourself, cool. Like, yes, you'll probably get it done eventually, but like if you've got 4 people sort of like eyeing you up from the side, like, you know, you doing it or what? Like, you know, are you like all talk, or you gonna show us like, you know, that you're actually here for it, that you actually want it? So that was like, you know, a big sort of growing phase. And then like that was obviously monk mode. I was 2 months. When then after that I came to Bali, you know. So like, don't get me wrong, I still work hard here, but because I put in that solid 2 months of work, I've now set myself up to have a bit more time throughout the day here in Bali to actually go out and enjoy myself and be able to surf and be able to go out for a boogie whenever I want, to be able to like, you know, have a bit of free time here and there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I definitely think it's like I like to think of it as like micro and macro scales. So you have to have like sprints and seasons of intense work, and then sprints and then seasons of like rest, macro. So those can be like, you know, months at a time or weeks at a time, or sometimes maybe even years. But then I also think on the micro, like you have to have some dedicated part of each day that are like, the way I frame it in kind of like a resource I put together, a previous podcast called the Da Vinci Blueprint. Like you have to define like 3 of your lever tasks. Like what are 3 things you're going to do that are going to move the ball forward, if you will. And then 1 to 3 recharge activities. So for you, it's like surf, or somebody, it could be like mobility or a long walk or going to the gym or dinner with friends. But something in the day has to get plugged in. Otherwise you like lose the forest for the trees pretty quickly. Because it's great, like, but if you're, say, dead in the middle of a 3-month sprint, like that month and a half, 2 months in, like if you're not giving yourself like little recharges each day, you're going to get smoked. And also you're going to lose the fervor for what you're kind of doing. Because I think, like, again, another one of those tropes that's like very true but needs to be hammered home is like all you have is the present moment. So it's something I talk about, like the best way to design your dream life is just to design your dream day. Like, what does a perfect day look like for you? What are the 3 levers that are going to move you towards whatever your macro goal is? And then how can you live that perfect day just on repeat? Because then you get the goal over however long it takes, 1 year, 5 years, a decade, 30 years. Like you could be chasing something so big. Maybe you won't even get it till you, after you pass. But if you design the perfect day and you're living that every day, you actually get to not hate the journey, which is, I think, very hard. And it's very like anti-zeitgeist with the hustle culture thing. And like, as a young man, like, it's just like, oh, you got to go become something. Like you got to be somebody, like you got to make people know who you are, remember your name, all this stuff. And like, I'm here for like the rally cry. Like it's good to get the, you know, masculine juice flowing, but we have no guarantee over when our time is going to get called. Like you've probably lost friends, loved ones, relatives, and you're a young man, you know, and like some of those people may also have been young people. The point is, like, we have no control and also no awareness of when that time is called. So whether it's tomorrow or like my bike home after this podcast, or literally like 50, 60, 70 years, like maybe I make it to the Centurion Club, like I could go at the distance, but I have no control. So if I delay and like push that satisfaction or the willingness to like be okay with where my feet are until I have X amount coming in per month, or I bought the house, or I have the body, or whatever it is, like got the girl, what if you don't get there? Like then all that time in between was just kind of like forfeit, and for what? So I'm like a big proponent of like those gratitude practices and making sure that like the journey to the thing is actually intentionally designed in a way that you have a positive experience the whole way through.
That's so important. Like, listen back to that, honestly. If you ever feel like ungrateful for where you are right now, it's something that I've preached time and time and time again, because, you know, like, it doesn't matter as well, like, how much you end up having or achieving. You look back down through your life and you'll realize that when you had less, and when you had like a simpler life and you had less work to do and less responsibilities, chances are you were perhaps just a little bit happier as well. You know what I mean? Not to say that I'm not happy right now, but like when I was just like in peak bliss, nothing to do, nothing going on, no online business, no one to answer to, no one to have to coach, or like, you know, no expectations of me whatsoever. And I was just like walking through the fields in the Irish countryside, peak lockdown. It was, you know, like you feel some type of way. You're just free and you're in bliss. Yeah, but about this like grind culture thing as well, you know, of like, you've got all these young men sort of brainwashed by like Andrew Tate, and I was there as well, but like, you know, guys like, you know, Tate or Ballmer, whoever, screaming down your back like, you're broke, you're gonna be unsuccessful and broke and unhappy, and you know your wife is gonna hate you and you're gonna lose it all, like you need to make money now. Like, I've been in that trap, and it's super counterproductive, because what that does to you, and coming at anything from like this mindset of I'm broke, I'm unfit, I'm stupid, I'm whatever, like doing that in the name of productivity is the most counterproductive thing you could ever do. Because if you come at something from hate, and scarcity, you come at anything from hate, scarcity, and a closed heart, like, okay, well, I'm fat and I'm broke, I'm gonna punish myself, like, dude, you're not gonna get very far. Just like you're saying, you're gonna end up burning out and you're gonna hate yourself even more. Whereas if you like reframe sort of that mindset, like, okay, well, maybe I'm not in the best physical shape because of my past actions, but now I have the knowledge to be able to do better, and therefore I'm going to act on that. I'm not going to get in shape overnight, because nothing happens overnight. However, I know that if I knuckle things down over the next 3 months, I'm going to get in decent shape, and, you know, almost doing it as an act of like self-love rather than self-hate. Like, I need this six-pack, versus like, I get to have abs, you know, like eventually through hard work and discipline and patience. Same with like this online business thing, you know, we're all in online business. Sure, you know, yes, we all have these like grand ideas and we want to bring a service to the world and we want to provide good for the world, but let's face it, we all want to be like, we want to be well compensated as well. You know, that's like a brutal truth. The world that we live in, you know, the financial system is essentially the governor of, you know, how we do things, you know, and like that's a brutal truth. You know, I'm like the last guy to like, you know, like firstly shy away from that, but secondly to actually like, you know, 100% focus on money as well. I think money is nothing but like a means of stored energy, and like the more you raise your energy, the more money you're gonna get in return for that energy. But anyhow, like if we're like, yeah, I'm dead broke right now, I need to make $1 million tonight, it's just all going to become like a big mess in your head, and like you're going to get probably nowhere. And let's say you maybe do get somewhere and you become like an overnight success, chances are you're doing that at the expense of your own good karma and taking advantage of other people, which I don't stand for that at all either. You know, there's so many, like, especially in this online business space, there's so many people that jump into online business just for the sake of money, from the love of money, and then end up doing that by pretty much scamming others out of their hard-earned money. And I know it's a brutal world. I know business is business, but doing that, like, it's only ever going to lead to bad outcomes, in my opinion. Because you're going to get money, sure, maybe, but it's going to be dirty money. Yeah. And then, like, do you believe in karma?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it's in, like, the traditional Hindu sense, but I absolutely believe in, like, the law of reciprocity and, like, I mean, it's even like in the fundamental laws. Like, we don't even have to go to the spiritual laws, like Newton's third law, every action has an equal opposite reaction. So like everything that you put out is coming back in some way towards you. And on the money thing, I think the reason I harp so much about like finding your gift and getting in an aligned path as the priority, rather than just trying to accelerate up the money hill, is like, I think it was Noah Ryan that tweeted this recently, and I don't think it was his first attribution, but I love it. And it's like, the second that you have your life provided for, how you make money will always be more important than how much money you make. Like literally once your head is above water, rent's paid wherever you want to live, food's paid, but it's like things are taken care of. It's no longer like a stressor. Everything on top of that has way less impact on your well-being, your felt sense of fulfillment, your sense of place in the world, your sense of meaning, your ability to contribute than how you are earning the money. So if you think of like, I also heard like another one that's comes to mind is like, if your only problem is a money problem, you don't have any problems. Because like we live in a super abundant world, and I do this example all the time with people. But it's like if you are in that scarcity mindset, because like that's how I was raised in a very scarce environment. Like that's a lot of the paradigm that was passed on to me. So I had to like actively overcome this. But it's like start to look around you and see what in your physical environment is represented by money. Like we're sitting in this villa, like this table right here. Some company manufactured this table and sold this as an individual product, like without the villa. So like this got here somehow. That's a whole company. And so is this water bottle and these mics and that chain and that shirt and those pants and that watch and like all around you. Everything is operated, at least like you said, in like the modern world with commerce. So like money as a form of energy, it's all around you. So it can kind of like rest assured that there are a million ways to make whatever you need to make per month, 5K per month, 4K per month, 10K per month, 100K per month, like whatever your goal is. There's a lot of ways to skin that cat. So the suggestion I posit, and I think this is backed up by like the infinite stories of entrepreneurs saying that money doesn't buy you happiness, is like try to figure out why and what you want to be doing and what gift you can give to the world, and then try to plug a monetization vehicle onto it. And then secondarily, like you're talking about with like operating from like the, oh my God, I need to get rich right now because I'm broke and whatever, like that urgency. It's just like, it's a fear-based paradigm, and fear is not from God. It's the antithesis of your intuition, and it's super constrictive energetically. Like the vibration, it constricts your entire being, which means that your problem-solving ability literally narrows. And like we know this even like from like studies in science too. Like when animals or human beings are trapped in a environment where there's like a stressor, like there's a threat, their judgment is critically impaired. Literally, like the eyes dilate. You start to have like a closed field of perception. You're taking in less information. So extrapolate that to business. Like if you wake up every day with like a cold sweat, like, oh my God, I got to pay rent, or like, if I don't get rich now, like what will my bloodline think of me? That kind of stuff. Like this, the paradigms that we can fall into because of the programming that's out there, it is literally inhibiting your ability to then go and make the millions of dollars and find creative solutions to it. So like one of my biggest, because this is actually something I dealt with stressing about like the how and the what over the last like 6 or 8 months leading up until like I had that mushroom trip. And one of the biggest takeaways from that reflection I had was treating life and like the money thing and just like finding your path less as a problem to be solved, but like almost like a fun game that you get to play, like a child. Like this is just like a fun puzzle that you get to like piece together. It's not like this urgent problem. Like no one's handing you a test. It's just like a game, you know? And if you maintain that like childlike sense of play with like no pressure, not like allowing anybody, like the voice of your parent or the person on the TV or the YouTube video or your friend or like old friend group or the girlfriend or whoever it is that's like that voice in your head. If you just don't buy into that lie, like that fear narrative, ironically, that's the fastest way to the top of the mountain, including the money problem. Yes.
And I'll back that up, you know, with saying that once again, that mindset of this being fun and this being a game is the most productive thing you could possibly do, because you don't have to get rich and you don't have to do any of this, but you get to. And you can. And why not? Why not, you know, shoot 100 different shots and see what sticks? And like at the end of the day, like you said, we live in such an abundant world. And it's funny because I was like just saying that as well, that if you look around literally wherever you are in the world, you can step out of your house right now and the roads are money. The trees are money. The grass is money. The tractor over there is money. The cows, a lot of money. There's money everywhere. So you're going to be well looked after so long as you have good energy and you take care of your body and your mind, you know, because you can take like like 100 million different shots at online business. None of them can work out. But realistically, what's the worst thing that's going to happen if nothing works out? Which is like a very, very slim chance. Like you just have to go work like a normal job for 2-3 months and then try again. Or
yeah,
like
you're
if you're a
literally
young guy,
you're literally exactly where you are starting.
exactly, you know.
Like
And
if
then
you've
like
never taken a shot, you're at the 9 to 5 now. So if your worst case scenario is back at the 9 to 5, the state
Oh, no.
is not altered. Like you've just added experience to the bucket, and we're exactly where we were. But now we know something. Now we learned something. Like, yeah. Sorry to like interrupt, but it's
no,
just
not
like,
at all. I was just gonna like add to that as well, especially like if you're a young guy, and like, you know, like for instance me, you know, like thank God or you know thank the universe or whatever you want to say, whatever you believe in, thank me that it worked out, I guess. But like in the back of my mind, even like in the Netherlands, what I had like in the back of my head is that, okay, well, my parents are telling me that I'm going to end up homeless and I'm going to end up broke and I'm going to end up this and a failure and I'm going to be out on the streets if this doesn't work out. But in the back of my head, all I could think about was, you know, I'm pretty blessed. Like if this doesn't work out, I just have to go home back to Ireland for a couple months and I get to try again, you know? And I know that not everyone has that, you know, opportunity. Not everyone's blessed to have that, but chances are, you know, like the worst case scenario really isn't that scary. It just means you're probably going to have to, you know, just go back to step one. And going back to step one, like you're saying, you know, you're going back to step one, but you're going back with a different mindset because you learn so many new things and so many new lessons. And like you've had so many new experiences. So yeah, this is a really interesting conversation.
No, yeah. And I think like to even add on, like it's really worth emphasizing because like it's an exercise I've taken clients through, and I had like in a previous program that I released. Is like it comes from Tim Ferriss, but it's called fear setting. But like fear is just this, it's this energy, it's this feeling in your stomach, it's this constricted feeling in your chest. But when you label it and bring it into the light, like you pretty quickly dissolve its power over you. And so in these cases where like you're trying to make any decision, you can essentially neutralize whatever that fear is by like just logically stepping yourself through it on a piece of paper and actually define like, okay. Like, I know you don't want the worst case scenario. Like, what if it fails? Like, cool. Like, we can change the language later. Let's agree it's going to fail. What does that actually look like? And for a lot of people, like you're talking about, many of the people probably listening, like you're born in the West and you probably still have a family to go back to, right? Like, so it actually is like you're more blessed than most of the world. But even if your actual worst case is something like we see here in like some of the third world countries that we travel to, and I think it's why travel is so important. Like if your worst case is like you can't crack it in online business and then you can't go back and there's no jobs available in the West and you have to find yourself to a third world country and like work a manual labor job at the beach or something, or like teach surfing on, like some of these people's lives are so simple and yet they're so abundantly happy because every single day they just wake up at the beach, do their thing, go to bed, rinse, repeat. Like if that is the true baseline and like all you literally need to do is just not starve somewhere in the world, like to me, it's like that is the ultimate permission slip or like freedom to go just take infinite shots at the giant dream. Because even if you keep missing, if your baseline is living off of like 6K a year in Thailand, but you get to live in a tropical paradise and eat tropical fruit every day, train, like move around, like if that's your baseline, dude, that's what a lot of the billionaires wish they could live like. Yep. So like aim at the big goal that you feel like calls to your heart, because like some of us were put here for really big missions. And it's insofar as that still calls to you, aim for it, go for it. But remember that like anytime you get afraid, you're already kind of living well above the dream anyway, or below that like true worst case. So the worst case isn't real. It just exists in your head and in the head of your scared friend, parent, etc. named person. And their vote of insecurity towards you is a vote of insecurity in themselves. They don't think they can do it. And they're just saying that you can't because it scares them. So yeah, I mean, I'm always harping on about like chasing the dream and shooting your shot. But like, I don't know, like it makes me sad that some people will go their whole life never trying simply because they were afraid. Yep. Like just the stuff that exists between their fucking ears. Like that is the only barrier to entry. If you were born in the West or in America or like any stable nation, you have been given the keys to the kingdom of heaven. Like literally, like you have an iPhone, you're watching this on the internet. Like look around you, like go after whatever that dream is, and you'll be surprised at how amazing things can turn out. Like I was actually walking on my beach walk last night, and somebody was doing like beach interviews. So the chick asked me, one of the questions was like, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received? And I don't know if this is the best piece of advice, but it was what came to mind at the time, on the spot, which is like, what if it could work out better than you can imagine? Like instead of asking, what if it doesn't work out, which maybe it's productive to get through the fear, but asking yourself the positive antithesis, what if it's better than you can imagine? Like you and I can at least speak for myself, but like right here, right now, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, even 1 year ago, like I couldn't have scripted this. Like I've been living in Bali for 6 months. Like at the end of the year, I will have lived in like across the world, through Europe, through Southeast Asia for a fully calendar year, traveling, working, creating content, meeting amazing people. Like I wouldn't have known that last year. Like December time last year was a dark place for me emotionally and personally. And I was still already in the arena, and then like wind it further back, like middle of university, I didn't know what business I was going to start. I didn't know if I was going to start a business. So the point is like, you have no idea how amazing the world can surprise you. So like open yourself up to the positive surprise rather than like, oh my God, what if the bad scenario happens? So like, what if it works out better than you can imagine? What if you meet the dream girl? What if it's like, what if you get the Stripe receipt for $10,000 you never expected? Like, I don't know, just like shoot the shot. You'll be shocked at how much bravery is rewarded.
It's insane. And I've been living by that as well. Like, you know, people hear it time and time again. It's so cliche to say, oh, well, if you would have told me this, for, you know, the me from 2 years ago, that I'd be doing this and this. But like, it's absolutely true. You know, when you shoot your shots, I feel like you just get rewarded by the universe for showing up, and for consistency, and for bravery, and for courage. And like, yes, you'll get tested, and the universe will be like, oh yeah, you really wanted this bad? Okay, well, here's the biggest roadblock that you could ever imagine. But you get past that roadblock, you take a left and a right turn, and then like, boom, it's like happy days ever after. It's insane. Yeah. Like the more you raise your energy, the healthier you get your body, the fitter you get your mind, the better thoughts that you think, the more and more you're going to get rewarded. And like, believe you me, I come from the most middle class family. My parents, you know, still work normal jobs. Like my next goal is obviously to, I hope they're not watching this actually. I mean, a big surprise there. You know, like I didn't grow up with money. I didn't grow up with, you know, I grew up in that scarcity and that lack, you know, but when you start opening up your mind and you start literally just thinking better thoughts, you never know what can happen. And just like one last thing, because I see you have your like laptop out here. Do you want to like wrap up?
No, you're good.
No. So I wanted to say, like throughout my journey, if there's one piece of advice I can give to anyone, that's like, no matter where it is you are in your journey, is just hang out the right people. And look, hanging out with the right people also means cutting out the wrong people, you know? So that's so huge and important. So if you're in a room of a bunch of naysayers and a bunch of people in this mindset of, what if it doesn't work out, Joe? What if you end up dying, Joe? What if the parachute doesn't open, Joe? You're eventually going to be sucked into that bucket of crabs. And you're going to be like, oh, well, fuck, you know, I'm scratching my head now. What if it doesn't work out? But counter that with, you know, a room full of like, you know what, go for it, Joe. You know, like, what if it does work out, Joe? What if you're Mrs.
We all already did it.
You know,
just jump.
Like, just come on. Like, let's get it, man. Just do it. And like, you'll notice that all of a sudden, it's like you come at it from like a different angle. Same way if you're in a room full of 5 smokers, you're going to become the 6th, no matter what your moral paradigm is. Eventually, you're going to quit. They're all going to be like, come on, Joe, just one toke, Joe, just do it. Same way if you're, you know, you're like in a room of, you know, 5 guys that take care of their health. It's like, you know, you're going to become the healthy dude that also takes care of his health. So many people get stuck in this trap. Well, there's actually 2 traps of, you know, either like me back in the day being the lone wolf because you feel like you've outgrown, you know, the people that you're surrounded with and they are that naysayer crowd, or just the next trap, which is a step before that, which is actually just being surrounded by the wrong people. So obviously from like a biological evolutionary standpoint, we grew up in small communities and tribes as humans. So obviously, like literally evolutionarily, the last thing we want is to be alone and to be left alone and to be ostracized from the tribe. So, you know, like nobody likes to be lonely. Like, sure, you know, we can be alone and we can be in solitude, whatever, but to actually be lonely is a terrible feeling. And many people would rather stick around with the wrong people just for the sake of not feeling lonely than to actually, maybe get rid of them and find and replace and find new people, because it can be scary, it can be scary, like, especially if you've got all these ideas, but, like, you've got these childhood friends and, like, they go out and drink beer on the weekend and they invite you, like, it can feel kind of weird to be like, you know what, like, not this week, boys, like, I'm going to stay inside and read my book, or I'm going to stay inside and wake up and go gym early, or, I have a new business that I'm working on. They're going to be like, what the fuck? Like, just 4 weeks ago, you were coming out with us and having beers on Friday. It's Friday. Why aren't you coming out? What's wrong with you? You've changed. What's wrong with you? Like, get back. Welcome to crabs. They'll, like, start pulling your leg back into that, and it can be so difficult to escape. So, yeah, I hope that makes some sense. Make sure you're surrounded by the right people. And there's so much that you can learn from being around the right person as well. Like, I've literally had conversations that have changed the trajectory of my life. And, like, as cringe as unbelievable as that sounds, that's all you need sometimes. And I'm sure maybe, a guy like you can relate as well. Sometimes 100%. You speak to one person and just from that alone, you're like, whoa, that's how they did it. Yeah. Well, if they did it, why can't I do it? It's crazy.
Yeah. Something I always say is, like, the quantum leaps that you want to have happen are going to happen through people. Like, yes. It's always the people. And it's similar to, like, my encouragement to always, like, be a voracious reader, because, like, you get the privilege of living one life. You only get one life experience. But by conversations, I get to 2x instantly. I get to tap into your life story. Okay, boom, you grew up in a different area. What was that like? Boom, you've tried this different business model. What was that like? Okay, you've dated like 30 more people than me. What was that like? You're in a successful marriage. How does that work? Like, you're literally, it's quantum fields. It's like literally living another lifetime. Books do the same thing, but conversations, you can iterate faster and you get the human dialogue rather than a monologue. So yeah, I think you're spot on there. You have touched on a number of times kind of like loneliness and like finding your tribe and stuff like that. Would you say, do you still struggle with loneliness sometimes?
Can't say I do. No, first things first, I live in Bali. So if you've never been to Bali before, I don't want to get even more people on this island, unfortunately, but it's absolute paradise. Like, the day-to-day that I have here, not only with obviously the locals, which are some of the nicest that I've ever met in the world, and I'd like to think that I'm pretty well traveled at 23. The locals are amazing, but couple that with the caliber of people that this island draws to itself is just insane. You can go out and about, and like pretty much every day, anywhere, you can meet someone that's like just on the ball, if you know what I mean. Just like business owners and cool people and people really passionate about different things, whether that be yoga or surfing or health and fitness or things like padel. There's just always someone interesting, like, everywhere you go. So the caliber of conversation that you can have here compared to like your average local pub down in County Limerick, where I grew up in Ireland, and it's like, oh yeah, just like chit chat bullshit. No. That, and couple that with the fact that, I have a pretty decent following online, I guess. I've connected with a lot of people, and then obviously on top of that, I have my own network of high tea winners and business killers that are doing great. So obviously the conversations that I have on the day-to-day are absolutely fantastic. I'm not lonely. However, one thing I'll say now is that a lot of my time I spend with other people now, and talking to other people and doing things with the guys in, Real Life Brotherhood, in my network, and, with the girl and with the guys, and I'm obviously living with one of the guys. The more time I spend with others, the more I realize how important it is to be alone as well. Because we were just talking about this, like, being with others is like all putting stuff out there, but you also need that time to actually only work inward. Because like right now I'm giving my energy out to the world, to you, versus if I go to, on my beach walk alone, or I go for a walk in the rice paddies alone, it's like I'm taking in that energy sort of from the universe or from the ether internally. So
yeah, that's good. I think it was just important to kind of address, and I think it shows kind of like the progression and growth. But Bart, this has been incredible. I appreciate your time. I want to be respectful to those that have listened thus far. I do have 3 closer questions for everybody on the podcast. The first is, if you can go back to a younger version of yourself and tell him one thing, what would that be and why?
Don't be scared. There's no reason to be scared. And I think, like, we covered that in absolute and complete depth, especially in the last 20, 25 minutes. The worst case scenario often isn't as bad as you think, especially if you live in the West. You're blessed beyond beliefs. And rather than thinking about why it won't work out, think of the upside. Think of what it'll be like when it does work out, because it will.
Secondly, what is one quote that's always stuck with you or that you try to live by?
It's right here on my birthday gift. I actually turned 23 a couple days ago, so you can actually read it out there.
It says, it'll always be okay in the end, and if it's not okay, it's not the end.
And it's absolutely true. You know, if there's something weighing you down, bogging you down, and you're like, oh my God, like, when is this going to end? Like, this is absolutely terrible. Chances are you don't even know how things are going to unfold, right? So if something isn't all right, it is not the end, because in the end, it'll always be all right. There you go. Simple.
I love it. And finally, what do you believe is your unique gift to give the world?
As it stands right now, I absolutely love connecting people together. And I know that that's, you know, pretty nuanced and like open-ended, but I figured that through my ability to connect with different people on different paths, I'm able to bring them all together quite well, because I've lived a lot of different lives. You know, I've been the alcoholic degenerate DJ in university. I've been the stoner dude in the Netherlands. I'm now the surfer dude on the beach. I've been the businessman on monk mode. I've been this, I've been that. So I feel like I resonate with a lot of different people, because I've had months where I've made a lot of money as well, and I've had months where I've been in the minus, you know, so I can empathize and connect with people. And through that, I'm able to connect people together quite well as well. Does that make sense?
It does. It's amazing. Well, Bart, it's been good. Where can the people find more of you, and what are you working on that you're excited about?
Quite a lot of different things. So obviously my Instagram is at Coach Bart K. Ideally it would be at Bart. So if anyone can help me buy that off the guy, I know exactly who it is. Please do help me out. I've offered him a lot of money, and he said no. That's a little secret for you there. But yeah, main thing I'm working on right now is exactly what I just said a second ago. It's connecting like-minded and ambitious men through my network and community, Real Life Brotherhood. So through that, not only do you get surrounded by a network of 6 to 7 to 8 figure entrepreneurs that are absolutely on their shit and like-minded with their views, you know, and essentially lust for life, guys that want more than your average person. Not only do you get that, but you also get coaching resources. Obviously, my own expertise over the last 3 years has been mentalistic lifestyle coaching. So everything from that to everything I've learned with online business to everything I've learned with, for instance, traveling the world, you know, at a very young age, and everything else in between. There's a couple other different things in the works. One of them is a secret, and another one is actually a physical business based out of Bali, still in the works. Very early days, but yeah, if you are in Bali and you would like to hear about what it is, do shoot me a text and I'll explain it that way. So yeah.
Amazing. All of Bart's links will obviously be in the show notes for everyone. You've found this on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever. Continue to follow along on those platforms for more podcasts. Subscribe to the YouTube. That is the best house of documentation of a bunch of different kinds of content, as well as the behind the scenes vlogs of everything going on. The new call to action, of course, is subscribe to the newsletter at thevitruvian.co. That is kind of longer form writings, weekly, going out every single Saturday. Really enjoying writing those. That's also documenting the process and trying to provide some more value, some deeper thoughts on certain topics, philosophy, spirituality, fitness, vitality, business, etc. But I've taken enough of your time. Thank you to the real ones who've made it this far. Remember, your time and attention are your most valuable resources, so thank you for spending them with myself and Bart today. Memento Mori, and I'll catch you on the next episode of the Vitruvian Podcast.
Be the Renaissance.
And if he fails, at least fails while daring greater, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat.